Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Tuesday, March 8th, 2022, and I am one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me, as always, is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
Hello.
How you doing today, Trev?
I'm doing all right. Hanging in there.
Hanging in there on this Tuesday here. Today we've got a fun little episode of News You Care About. A few different topics kind of percolated, nothing huge around the games industry. I think it should be a nice little show, if I say so myself. We're beginning, though, over at GamesIndustry.biz with a piece by Christopher Dring, I'd probably go with. That is Far Cry 6, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Ratchet and Clank sold better at physical retail than digital in the UK last year, which is really just like a long piece kind of detail on specifically within like the UK games industry, but I think it's a good kind of template for the industry as a whole. And the games that did better, worse, physical versus digital. I think it's kind of an interesting conversation as we kind of look to the industry. I think increasingly, if slowly and in fits and starts, kind of drifting towards more and more digital only. We'll start kind of broad strokes, Trevor. When reading through that, did anything particularly surprise you? Were there any big takeaways you had looking through Chris's article?
Nothing in particular. Obviously this is a relatively small sample size of the industry as a whole because it's just
the UK.
It's just UK, and you still have companies like Nintendo that don't release digital numbers, so you don't have like a perfect 1-to-1 across the board. But kind of going off of the lead there of them highlighting that. Despite these trends towards digital, Far Cry 6, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Ratchet and Clank sold better at physical. I started thinking about like those three titles in particular. Doesn't really surprise me too much. Ratchet and Clank came out pretty early in the year, back when PS5s are still very hard to come by. So I imagine as people picked up and were able to get PS5s, they were probably picking up Ratchet and Clank as this is the game you buy when you get your new console kind of option. So people were probably buying it physically, or it was like being bundled in with the console or something like that. Like pretty much every GameStop bundle I saw there for a while was like packing in Ratchet and Clank and a couple other games or something like that. So I imagine that may have played in some role. And then with Far Cry 6 and Guardians of the Galaxy, both those came out pretty late in the year, but also like a little bit ahead of the Black Friday sales. And so when Black Friday sales hit, both those games were like $30 half price physically, but not through the PSN stores and stuff like that. So they were probably much more enticing deals to buy physically. I bought Guardians of the Galaxy half price for that very reason, as part of a Black Friday sale, when it would have been otherwise $60 through like digital storefronts. So I think those are kind of the reasons none of those three really surprise me too much. And I think they speak to a larger thing that I occasionally see kind of flare up in conversations is physical. It seems gets discounted a lot more, or a lot more regularly, or they will be discounted and stay discounted, versus digital will be like full price unless it's on sale for a long time. Like I remember years after GTA 5 came out, going and looking and seeing that like digitally it was still $60 if you wanted to buy that game, even though going to any retail shop it'd be $30 at that point or something like that. There's obviously something that like Nintendo also deals with a lot, and because Nintendo just doesn't discount their stuff at all, there's really no like benefit going either way. Versus so I think like as stores need to make room for inventory and clear off shelves, they discount the physical stock in a way that a digital storefront doesn't have to do. So if you're not picking something up on sale digitally, it might be a higher price than you would find it if you went down to your local GameStop or something like that, or
Yeah.
whatever the UK version of GameStop is. EB, it's not
Yeah.
EB Games, no game. I think it's just Game, whatever
Is it just
whatever
game?
it is over
Yeah,
there.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think those are all totally valid points, right? Like running through the article for me, aside from kind of the usual eye roll I do at most things Nintendo does, like not sharing their digital game sales, one of the big takeaways was I think just kind of the larger pattern of games that did or didn't do well digitally versus physically. Um, right. And I think just how well Nintendo games did, right? Like the line in the article is like over 47% of all games sold at physical retail last year in the UK were Switch games, which obviously is a huge percentage. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I find the UK interesting because it is a much more urbanized and like high speed internet access location than the US as a whole is. Obviously, because the US is kind of plagued in the middle of the country by not those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's kind of a better test case for like what a lot of Europe looks like, kind of as a whole, and then probably the coast of the US. And so I think,
I mean,
looking at that,
I would
like,
say there's still a lot of like rural areas in the UK too, though. Like
sure, but
sure not as much landmass maybe, but
yeah, but even like the difference, I guess, is that like in the UK, you're never not still near a place, right? Like the time difference is just vast, right? Where it's like if you're in like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, you were like hours and hours from like big cities, right?
Mhm.
Whereas like the UK, it's like you're probably at the most like an hour away from like a metropolitan area in that country, just by the sheer size of what it is. Um, but yeah, like I think it's interesting, right? And seeing that like FIFA, which was the best selling game in the UK, you know, did more than double the sales of the next closest game, was so predominantly digital. I thought it was interesting, but then I kind of thought about it more, and I think those kind of games make so much sense to be digital, right? Like whether it's FIFA or like, a 2K game or a Madden game, those are games I haven't thought to go to like a physical brick and mortar store to get like a copy of in years, because just like, yeah, like I see it on sale when it drops, I download it, and so many people are focused on like the online component of those games anyway, that it seems natural that you would just kind of get it digitally and just kind of go from there, right? And so like that feeds into that, especially with FIFA and what they're trying to do with like, their ultimate team online modes. Right. And I think those games being geared towards people in their 20s and 30s who grew up playing games, maybe don't have a lot of space right now because they're kind of in like apartments or lofts or that kind of stuff. And then in terms of like, Far Cry, or obviously we don't have the stats on it yet, but like a Horizon or that kind of game that is more of a like single player focus, like narrative campaign, those are the kind of things where I see people get in a physical copy because they want to like collector's edition thing, or, they want like the premium package or that kind of stuff, or they want to just own it because it's a game that they think they'll love. And no one's really getting a like thing they love from a FIFA game, right? Or a Madden or NBA 2K. And so it sort of increasingly makes sense that way. And then also I think the way that EA is going about trying to sell their games as kind of this like service and online platform versus obviously Sony first party studios isn't doing that in the same way for the most part. I think helps kind of feed into it, right? Like ultimately, you can argue not even ultimately, like we're already sort of there, right? Where like you just can't play games if you don't have an internet connection in a lot of ways now. Right, like the arguments and like the wars, it felt like from like a generation or two ago, have largely been settled, right? Like you just can't play a lot of video games if you don't have an internet connection. Even if you physically buy the game, it still can be meaningless to you, right? I think Cam Hawkins had like a whole Twitter thread about this like a few weeks ago about how like he bought the game and then like couldn't play it without having to like download it. And so that like delayed him playing the game for like a night, right? And so I think the industry's already kind of decided that, and it's just how quickly more and more consumers latch onto that idea. And there will always be people who buy physical copies because they like physical media, just like in films. But I think that's sort of the direction we're trending in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think there's also certainly an audience that, and I don't know how big of an audience they are these days or anymore, but especially on like single player experiences, you buy those games maybe physically with the intent of returning it or not, not returning it, but but like taking it in for a trade-in kind of value or something like that
At, like,
when
a
you're done
GameStop.
with it.
Yeah.
And
That's a great point.
And obviously, then that second sale isn't going to get tracked physically through a lot of these kind of metrics and stuff. So that, that could also be playing a role, as opposed to, as you kind of touched on, these like very multiplayer focused kind of games, or these like always online kinds of games might just be less likely to be traded in. Because you're going to need to keep, like, if you want to keep playing, Vanguard, you're going to need to still have Vanguard.
Yeah. I'm curious what you like, and this is all sort of like anecdotal, but like how many people actually are doing that still, right? Like in like 2005, for sure, that was a huge chunk of, I feel like, of people, right? Like me among them would buy games and then like, return them. But now I wonder how many people are actually still doing that.
I mean, I would say it is the people who were however old you were in 2005.
Right.
It's
junior high
it's
school, right?
It's the
Early
young
college,
younger people that don't have as much free disposable income to like buy a steady stream of games. I mean, like even among our kind of communities, I still see a ton of people that are like, I picked up that game. I mean, like Frank with our site, I think he uses like a GameFly type of subscription or something. I don't think he's really like actively out there buying a ton of these games. So like it's those kinds of people as well that aren't necessarily being kind of included in the mix because they.
I didn't even think about GameFly. That's a great point.
Yeah, because they're just looking for that kind of like, I'm gonna play this, for the handful of hours I'm gonna play it, and then I don't need it cluttering up a shelf or something like that. But I can send it back to somebody, or I can trade it in or something like that, and put that money towards the next game. So I think there was, especially because some of the article was talking about how like there was a like dip year over year in some of these percentages, and I think that's in part because 2020 that wasn't an option, some of that stuff, because of because of everything being closed, whereas last year things started opening up and people started kind of returning to that semblance of normalcy or that sort of pattern of behavior. So again, I don't think that's necessarily like a huge segment, but in a sample size, like the UK here, it might not be insignificant to some of those factors.
It's definitely a great point, right? And I think the GameFly stuff in particular, like those kind of services, is one that obviously I think will make some sort of an impact on kind of the actual final numbers, right? And those kind of things that I hadn't even thought about. And Frank preached about it. He's a big fan of it, and that's why I play so many of his games. And honestly, probably it's a better time investment for a lot of people's money than actually buying them. I mean, I'm curious, I guess, kind of looking more long term at how quickly or slowly the numbers will kind of shift in terms of like more and more digital, as kind of people, I think, will shift more and more that direction versus physical. And sort of how long that will take, and kind of until it becomes a tipping point of like, you just have to play the game digitally, or you can get a physical copy, but it'll just have a code in it, and that is going to be it. Right? Because they're always going to make physical copies of these games for collector's editions and that kind of stuff. But
I mean, like, yes and no. So I got the physical collector's edition of Horizon Forbidden West, for example, and that came with a digital code. It didn't come with a disc. And I think this generation in particular, we're going to see a lot of that, because people who bought the discless PS5 or the Series S
you're right,
don't have a way of putting a disc into those consoles. So I think a lot of those collector's editions are this generation going to move towards, hey, you're buying the physical thing, but we're going to give you a code for the game as opposed to a physical copy, because we recognize that you might not be able to do anything with that disc if we give it to you.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that aspect of it too, right? Of the game makers and console makers themselves kind of forcing the issue in that way, right? Of just being like, yeah, like not everyone has an ability to play this, but everyone's got obviously an ability to download a code.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to make that increasingly the default for everything, which in and of itself is going to make more people, I think, go digital, right? Because that'll just be their default.
Yeah, plus the the always present rush to like play it as soon as it unlocks online. You're playing the biggest game like a few hours before midnight the night before it comes out, as opposed to waiting until your physical copy shows up the next day or something like that.
Yeah.
It's, for some of those people, it's like, yeah, I want to buy digital just so I can play it as quickly as I can. I don't want to have to wait that extra time for a physical delivery to make its way, or I don't want to have to wait to go to a store to pick up a copy.
Yeah, especially with games, like having like the countdown time of when it would go unlocked, right? Or like you can play a portion of the game with like a shorter download before while it's downloading like the larger thing, right? Like those kind of things that are getting you in the door quicker, even if you're downloaded it, so you have to wait for like an entire like 8-hour download or something like that. You can just hop in, or even pre-download it, obviously, as well.
And I think that also ties back to the Nintendo side of things, because Nintendo is not the most online friendly architecture and infrastructure and stuff. It makes sense a lot of times for people to buy physical with those games, especially because the Switch itself is an on the go kind of system. You might not have easy access to internet. You might be, on the road or something. So you need to have that cart in there for your bus ride or your tube ride in the UK and stuff. So it makes more sense to have the physical carts of a Switch game versus attempting to download it and then just not being able to really access it because you're not connected to a network or something wherever you are.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Like, and I also just think, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but I feel like people who own Switches and are into like the Nintendo family of games typically are really into them, right? And have a lot of Nintendo and want the collectibles, right? And want the like things and have the Funko Pops and all that kind of stuff.
It's also, it's also families.
That physical collection.
Yeah, it's giving, like a parent giving their children the game as opposed to giving them a Nintendo eShop card or something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point too, right? Like just like the family dynamic of Nintendo versus some of the other ones that is just inherently different, right? Like, because that is always the thing, right? Of like, like Christmas time when your parents getting you this hodgepodge of games you might not like, and that is a very Nintendo memory. It's a really funny point.
I mean, also of the like, so looking through the like, because this article in particular has like a top 20 of those 20 games, only 8 of them were from last year. Like a whole bunch of them are earlier games. I think that's right. I think
GTA 5 is number 3, for example.
Exactly. And so what I was going to say on that is a lot of the games on this list aren't even available on Nintendo because I think that also, plays a factor of, these are primarily available on PlayStation and Xbox, which just, I think, has audiences that are more geared towards digital sales as a result. So like the Nintendo factor isn't really weighing them down or anything like that. I mean, like, because the one of the ones I will say that like stood out to me is like Minecraft being number 9 on this list with only an 18.3% physical share or digital share. I'm like, who is buying Minecraft physically in 2021? Nintendo people. Like Switch people who are buying it on the Switch are probably buying the little Minecraft cartridge, and they're probably still having, like, if they really want all the other things in Minecraft, they're gonna have to like buy all that stuff digitally. But like, that one, because that 18.3% is on par with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart in terms of like the physical versus digital side of things. So I think that's that's probably one of the biggest anomalies on this list to me is like who is buying Minecraft still physically.
It also, the Minecraft physical digital one is also interesting because it sort of disrupts my larger theory of, a lot of the games that do best digitally are older games because people aren't really going into shops to buy GTA 5 physically anymore, right? Which has a 76% digital share, right? Or like Black Ops Cold War, which is 74%, Red Dead Redemption 2, 78%, right? Like those kind of older games have a high percentage because we'll just kind of see them on sale probably, or, it's popping up the, Twitter Discord and they're like, I want to hop and play this game kind of thing now, right?
Or they're not in the shops anymore. Like they're just not there physically.
Yeah, they're just physically not there. People aren't trying to get Rainbow Six Siege, which is at like 96%, right? Digital, physical. And so like that is also an element I think of this too, is that like as games get older, you're gonna have to get them digitally for the most part because there just aren't physical versions of them in shops. The few that remain. Trevor, any final thoughts on kind of the larger digital physical conversation for the episode here?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I covered pretty much all the little bullet points I had.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. This definitely will be, I'm sure, an ongoing conversation we have, or the industry as a whole has.
Yeah, it's definitely
the last few years
whenever these kinds of like recaps come up, or whenever like NPD does any kind of like analysis on this side of things, like I'm always very curious about them. And it's always frustrating when not everybody is playing by the same set of rules, and
usually
Nintendo is like Nintendo is hiding that information. Or it used to be like, I think Bethesda used to be another one, but now they're under Xbox's banner, and Xbox is fine sharing that information. So
super,
it's always like I wish fewer of these things had asterisks by them, so that we could really do some good evaluation and analysis on this, because seeing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as the number 5 selling game on there, and especially like obviously it hadn't been announced yet, but like knowing now that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is probably going to get another uptick in sales because they've got this whole like digital only like kind of new courses pass that they're adding to basically double the content of that game over the next couple of years, but like we won't know really how those sales are impacting it or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm excited to see kind of larger conversation, and I also really enjoy always getting these kind of more numbers-based articles like this. I'm always kind of a sucker for it. That takes us into the doubleheader fun shoutouts section. I thought both of these were really fun stories. The first one I want to share is going to be going over to Waypoint, formerly Vice Gaming's and formerly Waypoint, which is Elden Ring is Jackass, the video game. I think it's just a really funny look at this game, and I love pieces like this, right, that kind of do view games through a different lens, right? Like I think of years ago at this point now when I first hopped into No Man's Sky, and how I described it as like a horror game because of how like isolated and lonely it is and like weird. And so I love seeing the fact that Elden Ring is described as a Jackass of games. It's a very funny piece, and I think it is it's really charming. I encourage everybody to go check it out. Gita Jackson does a lot of great writing. They are very good at it and very, very funny, and so I encourage everybody to go check that one out. And then the second shout out is going to be Frogger Player sets new arcade world record of over 1.3 million. This is over on Kotaku. This is almost like just, I enjoy these stories if only because it is a nice spiritual flashback to the recurring, am I going to get David Mitchell, one of the guy who broke the like Donkey Kong record, who was like the recurring like side character on Input back in the day, and his various exploits. And so it is a nice kind of flashback to this. Hopefully the player is less problematic, but he obliterated the record. I mean, the old record he broke by 400,000 points. So It is an incredible achievement.
It was Billy Mitchell.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The king of calling.
But yes. Yeah, the king of calling, absolutely. And his slow fall down. Yeah, so those are my 2 shoutouts. Outside of that, sure, you said, I believe you didn't have any shouts, right?
Not this week. Nope.
Let's wrap it up then. So that is the show. I hope you like what you heard. If you did, you can go over
Jared's
to
going to be really happy with this one.
You can go over to thatnerdysite.com. That's funny. You can go over to thatnerdysite.com where you can check out all the latest reviews, features, podcasts going live there. Lots of great written content. You can finally go check out all the Game of the Year stuff. You can also go over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite and check out all the videos we have going live. Monday through Saturday, we've got something new happening, and some days we double up, like Fridays, for example. In addition to that, you can go over to the podcast service of your choice, like, subscribe, share the videos and podcasts with your friends, help spread the word on all the things happening over here, and rate and review us on iTunes. Give us the 5 stars. It really does help get more eyes and ears on the shows. We appreciate it very, very much. After that, you can go over to @TrevorJStarkey on the internet, where you can go find Trev, anything that you want to plug or shout out.
Yeah, I will shout out this week's That Nerdy Site show is the Batman spoiler cast with me.
I'm very excited.
Cameron talking about the movie. We, as always, with these with our spoiler cast, we do like a spoiler free section first, and then we kind of dive into spoilers for the later part of the episode. So you can get kind of our broad thoughts if you haven't seen it yet. And then also, just speaking of Nintendo stuff, this week is Nintendo Week on our Let's Plays. Today's the Let's Play we did today on Tuesday was Triangle Strategy. I played the first couple hours of that game, and then the episode that's going to go live on Thursday is Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, the demo that Nintendo put out for that. I was like, well, I've booted up my Switch for the first time in about a year. I might as well just knock out a couple of Let's Plays.
Love a good Kirby game.
So yeah, you can go check those out as well.
Love all that. You can go find me at LeftyLoggy on the internet, LOGGY. I will echo that shout out like I do almost every week. Trevor does great work on the Let's Plays, and so does Cameron, who's doing his Friday night Dying Lights Let's Play every Friday night. You can go check those out. He's through the first 5 episodes, I believe, now he's gotten through on that. I watched the latest episode this past weekend. As I mentioned on that Bond show that you can listen to in 3 weeks, it is Cameron Abbott playing video games, and it is always funny to watch that unfold. In addition to that, you can go check out that D Plus show. A lot of good episodes happening there. We've mapped out what we're going to do for March. Very excited for all the different episodes there, including this. Yes, I'm trying to think when to go. Yeah, this week's episode, which will be over Jungle Cruise, and a couple of weeks from now, when we'll be doing West Side Story and then Moon Knight. So we're really excited for all the happenings on that D Plus show. Otherwise, I saved it for the last one. You can go over to That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site, and on Twitter, check out all of this happenings all across the internet. And outside of that, if you like what you heard, again, thank you for watching and thank you for listening. If you did that route, for myself, for Trevor, for all of us here at That Nerdy Site and That News Care About, play your games and be good to each other.